Hey guys, it's Billy and welcome back to Spill Sesh. Today we have got to talk about the Hype House Netflix show because believe it or not, there was some serious drama and a lot of it surrounded Lorray and Nikita Dragun. Netflix was done with these guys. Clearly, after a year plus of trying to make this show work, they decided to air out everyone's dirty laundry and they were not trying to make the cast likable at all. That's for sure. They covered them partying during the pandemic, them partying while they have COVID, and Nikita's blackfishing, plus so much more. So let's just dive right into this Nikita Dragun storyline because it's insane, and the things that she said to try to defend herself are just not sitting right with people at all. In the show, they covered how Nikita is quite problematic and has been called out for blackfishing in photos. They also show tweets of Nikita joking about this and never really seeming to take this whole thing seriously when she's called out for it, which obviously makes her look much worse in the situation. They even showed a screenshot of the time Nikita tweeted out, "What race is Nikita gonna be today?" Like I said, the show was not holding back from shining a light on Nikita's problematic side. Now, in one of the episodes, Lorray sits down with Nikita to talk about what the F she's doing. But before showing this conversation, they included clips of him talking to one of his friends about this particular situation and the fact that he feels like he needs to talk to Nikita because he himself is getting called out. He said that he loves her as a person and she's really been there for him since the beginning of his whole career and they're so close, but the internet is calling him out and they're wondering why he's friends with her and they don't want him to be friends with her because of all the hurtful things that she's done. And Lorray is venting about how having a conversation about this with her is really uncomfortable and trying to hold her accountable for what she's doing is just an awkward thing for him to bring up, but he still wants to do it. He knows he needs to. So he sits down with her and they're just talking at first and she kind of jokes about how she's pretty and problematic. And after that, he was like, well, speaking of you being problematic, he says that he F's with her so heavy, but he feels like he can't just sit back and let people on the internet and the Black community say, how are you friends with Nikita when she blackfishes? And he says, I see you in person almost all the time and you don't look like those pictures on the internet. He says sometimes he knows like people just troll or sometimes it's the lighting or sometimes it's a filter, but people are offended by it and says that Nikita's been coming off as ignorant when she's responding to people talking about her. And he says he just can't defend her on this one and he can't just sit back and do nothing about it either. So he needs to confront her about it. And so they're having this conversation. And her response, you guys, I'm nervous that I'm gonna get copyrighted from Netflix if I show you like the clip of it. So I'm gonna play a clip that I used in my TikTok that hasn't gotten copyrighted. So hopefully it won't get copyrighted here. Also, if you guys didn't know, I do have a TikTok. I post tea videos on there and honestly, sometimes it's more up to date than my own YouTube channel. So follow me on there. It's not even just YouTube stuff. It's celebrity stuff, random tea that I post about that I think is interesting. A lot more randomized than here. But anyways, back to this whole Nikita situation. This is what Nikita said.
You just can't post pictures or post anything where you just look obviously darker than you are. Like I can't just sit back and let that slide. Because the main thing that people will say about you is that she blackfishes.
With that situation, it kind of sucks because it's like that is like my natural like skin tone sometimes, and maybe it's lighting or whatever. And like when things come up nowadays, I'm just like, whatever, it's another thing coming up. It's another person trying to like expose me. It's another person making like fake tweets or whatever.
Ooh, I want to sock you so bad.
Please.
I feel gaslighted. You know, damn well I don't let that shit slide. I would never be friends with a racist, first of all, bitch. And if I ever catch you do some weird, that's what I'm punching you.
I would hope you would. But I almost would rather be painted out to be the bad guy as opposed to try to uphold some standard that like I'll never live up to.
That is my natural skin tone sometimes. Sometimes, you guys, that's what she said. The way Lorray was not having any bit of her words and he was like shaking his head at her the entire time she was talking, and the fact that he said that he felt gaslighted. The most insane part to me is when Nikita seems kind of okay with it. She seems okay with having this reputation since she says like she would almost rather be painted out as this bad guy instead of trying to uphold this standard that she'll never live up to. It's almost like she's saying she doesn't want to be a good person because then she'll always have to be a good good person and she doesn't want to be a good person. I don't know about that one, Nikita. Like, that just doesn't sound very good. But then she goes on to say that she doesn't want to be dismissive and she doesn't want to offend anyone, and she does say that she is sorry, and they end up talking it out and exchanging I love yous, and it seems like everything between her and Lorraine are all good and dandy. A lot of people on TikTok were like, oh my god, like, how are they still friends after she's like trying to defend herself in this way? And people said that, oh, but he still follows her, so I really don't understand it. All this stuff, because people still feel like Nikita hasn't changed at all from when she said this while they were recording the show, because they recorded the show a while ago. But I want to say that this isn't the first little drama that these two have been in on this show. The first few episodes discussed partying during the pandemic, and in one of the episodes they joked about who was like the last to be canceled. Lorraine said that he thinks it was him because Nikita threw him a birthday party and they got into major trouble because it was peak pandemic. And oh my goodness, I mean, the fact that Netflix was willing to cover the Hype House getting called out major for partying during the pandemic, I mean, it was every single week it seemed like. And I truly feel like this is when Charlie and Addison really wanted to separate themselves from the Hype House, because they were getting major publicity just on their own and really trying to turn themselves from influencers to actual celebrities. And I think both of their management teams were like, you need to get away from the Hype House because these people are being problematic and they will cancel you for hanging out with these people and going to parties. But I very much remember Nikita throwing Lorraine a birthday party, and everyone was just totally shook at the fact that this birthday party was so extravagant. Obviously no social distancing, the peak of the pandemic, right in the thick of it. And it just really upset a lot of people when this was going on, because there was a lot of rules in LA at the time. There was like a curfew, there were fines if you had parties like this, and the fact that none of that mattered to them just really said a lot to people. Nikita owned up to the fact that she shouldn't have done this, that it wasn't safe at all. But I mean, literally in the next episode, like, they're talking about the fact that Nikita went to another party later on, like after this. I mean, we all knew, seeing all the posts and like all the stuff from peak pandemic, that none of them really cared. So I don't think anyone is really shocked by this, but I think it's pretty funny that Netflix is the one calling them out on it in a show that I think they all were just like so excited to have to be on Netflix, and then for it to make them not look really good is definitely interesting. But the drama between Lorraine and Nikita continued because there was a situation where Lorraine tested positive for the vid and still went to a party with Nikita, you guys, despite the test results being positive. And Nikita's team calls her in one of the episodes and is like, so Lorraine's team is actually trying to spin the story and say that you dragged him out of the house and forced him to go to a party despite the fact that he tested positive. And Nikita was like, whoa, hold up. His team is trying to take the blame off him by blaming me for making him go to this party. Nikita is so mad, obviously, because Lorraine is in charge of himself and he should not be blaming anyone else for making him party while he's positive. He's a grown adult who can make decisions for himself. It's not like Nikita like actually like dragged him out of the house. Like, he definitely walked out to the car. Nikita says the same thing, that she didn't force him to do anything, and he said that he tested positive, but then he said that he actually took another test and he tested negative. So he was like, oh, I'm good, like, let's go to this party. Nikita was telling her entire management team that it was Lorraine's decision to go to this party. It was all him. He was negative. She never would have encouraged him to go if he was positive, which some people are like, really, Nikita? Really? I could definitely see you convincing him yes or no, especially Nikita with that little mess that she tried to pull off that one time. But definitely not cool of Lorraine's team trying to pin it on Nikita and not on him at all. Like, it's definitely on him too. So Nikita ended up being super mad about this and later confronted him about it, and he did admit that it was wrong of his team to protect him by dragging Nikita down and apologized to her. And they seemed kind of all good up until, you know, he had to have the conversation with her about blackfishing. I do want to mention that Lorraine did go on stream and say that the show was edited to make him look bad, that he never did go to a party while he tested positive or anything like that. But Netflix needed a storyline because they had to cut an entire storyline from the show. If you guys didn't know, Jack and Sienna May were supposed to be very big characters in the show, but they had to cut it out due to accusations of SA against Sienna. So Lorraine is trying to say that in order to cover up all that footage that was lost on that part, they had to cover it up by making Lorraine a big character and by making him look bad.
The Hype House show, if you watched it, episode 3 is fabricated and full of a lot of bull because did not go to NT parties with COVID. Let's clarify that one Let's just clarify that really quick, because that is really bugging me. But due to the fact that Sienna and Jack had their altercations and issues, they needed something with, you know, a storyline, and they had to paint that to be the storyline, which is so, because I just feel as though like I was thrown under the bus, and it's not fair at all.
So clearly you guys can see the show is a mess, and it is an entertaining mess, as a lot of people have been watching it. It's trending number 5 on Netflix because I know you guys, people are curious about what the show is about. It definitely exposed a lot of them, and I definitely want to know if you guys have been watching this show. Nikita's been talking about the show on her Instagram story as well.
Let's talk about this Hype House show real quick. You guys, we are top 5 on Netflix right now. I cannot believe it. It's honestly like a really good show, and I think people are gonna be surprised when they get into it. So if you haven't watched it, watch it. If you have watched it, let me know what you think about it.
And Nikita definitely was throwing shade at somebody on the show though, because she posted a series of Instagram stories before this show came out, and she said, "I know who's fake and who's real. I just play along. Y'all are about to see how your faves really act on this Netflix show. All I know is I kept it 100. So there's definitely people or a person that Nikita is calling fake. Some are wondering if she means Lorray or what the dealio is, but I mean, yikes. Nikita thinks someone is being fake to her. I definitely want to know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, guys.